Coming to you from fabulous Las Vegas.
The right side is the winning side.
The late move is the correct move.
Sports betting capital of the world.
We all know when a sharp like me weighs in, the lines move.
It's a party for your ears. This is The Buffet with Chad and Scooch.
I want to buy that guy a buffet.
Hello, welcome back to The Buffet with Chad and Scooch. I am Chad Millman of the Action Network. On the phone with me from New Orleans, bookmaker there in all the Boyd gaming books in the state of Nevada, Mr. Bob Scucci. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, Chad. How are you?
I'm doing great. You know, one thing I have not done, which I promised I would do, I have not tweeted out the picture of you, of the spider that attacked you. And we have had people asking if there was going to be any follow-up on that. And so I just want you to know that people are concerned about you and that they think about how are you doing. And here's one from Brock Landers. It's at Brock Landers 41. Owls, movie night in the courtyard. What went on this past week?
Well, it wasn't as exciting as the other week, so not a whole lot. You know, I just a couple of cigars and some good scotch. So I guess that's pretty boring.
You were just living the life, aren't you?
So yeah, we built a little cigar room. I say a little cigar room. My wife calls it a wine room. I call it a cigar room. So it's cigar/wine room. Mm-hmm. So from the courtyard, we have a separate kind of room. You go upstairs, and so it was just some good scotch and some cigars.
I don't even know what kind of life you're leading right now.
But, you know, going back to the tarantula, I didn't get a chance to actually tell you how, when I got close to this thing, it did something so bizarre, but I found out from a local kind of native guy around here that knows all about these things that it was natural. This tarantula freaked out, and he rubbed two of his legs together like so fast that it looked like he was just vibrating. But I found out that that's when they get agitated, what they're doing is they're rubbing their legs together to shoot the little barbs off their legs at their attackers. So that was like his defense mechanism. I just thought he was freaking out, but I found out later that was what he was doing. He was trying to defend himself.
It sounds like your microphone is scratching its legs together.
Okay.
Maybe it's just rubbing against your shirt or something.
That could be.
Scooch, we have so much to talk about in the podcast today. I had asked people on Twitter for questions. Send me ScoochPod questions. And so we're doing that. We are going to talk about the Steelers being the team that the Action Network is declaring has the best odds to make the Super Bowl. We're going to talk about new power ratings for the Eagles and how you finally adjusted them. We're going to talk about a little college football and where the sharps are. We'll go through the games and then we'll play from Scooch Roulette. The first thing I want to do, though, is here's a great question from a user who sent this in, and I think you're really going to appreciate this. This is from Jason Jacques at AK underscore hold on. Sorry, I lost that one. At AK underscore Jason J. What did Scooch see in Chad to choose him to both ghostwrite Scooch's Book the Odds and co-host a podcast with him?
I'd have to say the caring in your eyes, Chad. You're just a caring guy, and what better person to write anything about me than somebody who can kind of understand me and just know me.
I don't disagree with you. I think I have a lot of empathy. I have a lot of sympathy. I'm so good at faking both of those things for people I don't care about is really the thing.
Yeah, so you're very good at that, so I'll give you that.
You know?
Because you had me fooled. If
you lived with me, my wife and kids would be like, I've never seen any kindness in his eyes at all.
Yeah.
Here's the other question that came in. This is a good. I mean, there's a ton of questions that came in, but this is a good one specific to the podcast. This is from Leo Connolly at BASSNT7. I'm heading to Vegas and staying at the Orleans this weekend. Will Battered Flacco be on the menu? As a reminder to everybody, in the last podcast Scooch and I did for ESPN, we were talking about Joe Flacco getting battered all the time. And I said to Scooch, that sounds like it would be a really good menu item. And so we decided to get it in the buffet at the Orleans, at least try. And the buffet is sort of the center of our world. It is why we now call the podcast The Buffet. You're listening to it on the Action Network, where we have many, many podcasts. And you can sign up for our newsletter, by the way, at actionnetwork.com. So, Scooch, I believe, why don't you remind us what the chefs at the Orleans ultimately decided Battered Flacco could be? I thought it should be some kind of fish, like a fried fish, a fluke, but that's not what they went with.
Yeah, no, we went with like a panko crusted flank steak that's kind of flash fried with a little chimichurri sauce on it. So we try to get the battered and the flanco, the battered and the flacco, and the closest thing we came to was like a flank steak that's battered, and it came out pretty good. So it's just the flank steak, flash fried, little cubes, panko crusted, and little chimichurri on the side. Now, I can't guarantee that this is going to be in the buffet. I don't make these calls. I carry a lot of weight, but when it comes to the individual items in all of our restaurants, I'm outweighed by the big guns upstairs.
Listen, I think what we need to do is get the executive team that decides what goes on the buffet and the podcast, and we're going to make a very persuasive argument. We're going to let them know how many people come to you for buffet tickets looking for Battered Flacco in the buffet. And this could be a boon for business.
I'm going to make my case, but first I have to get the guys upstairs listening to the podcast. It's kind of like you trying to convince your wife to listen. I've got to convince them to listen.
See, that's not nice. I don't know why you want to hurt my feelings like that. Let's get to some action here, Scooch. So on the Action Network, in our podcast today, or in our newsletter today that was sent out this morning, we had a really cool story on Sports Insights, which is a member of the Action Network and one of the sites that is in the Action Network. And they pointed out that based on their projections, which combines a lot of different things, including the rest of the record for the regular season, that record's strength of schedule, looking at simulations they do playing 10,000 games, et cetera, the Steelers have the most likely chance to make the Super Bowl because the AFC Championship game will end up in Pittsburgh, where they will play the Patriots, because the Steelers' schedule the rest of the year is just not very hard, and the only hard game they have is against the Patriots, whereas the Patriots, they got the Bills twice, they got the Jets a couple times, they got the Steelers. They just have a harder schedule. What do you think of that theory? What do you think of that positioning statement?
Well, it makes sense. I mean, we've had the Steelers rated pretty highly all season. When we were making our preseason ratings, in the NFC we had the Packers and the Seahawks rated pretty highly, and in the AFC we had the Steelers ranked right up there next to the Patriots. We were actually disappointed coming out of the gate when the Steelers didn't look as good as we thought they would be, and maybe we thought it was Roethlisberger announcing his retirement after the season, and maybe he's just really didn't have the heart in going into this season. But that wasn't the case after a few games. They picked up a couple of nice wins, the big win at Kansas City and at Detroit, and they've got some nice wins along the way that they've rebounded from the little slip up against the Bears. But so if you look at the rest of their schedule, I think it's a pretty easy conclusion to come to that next to the Patriots, they're going to be right there in the AFC.
So what you're saying is basically we didn't need to do all the projections and the fancy math because you're just going to lick your pencil and come to the same conclusion anyways.
Hey, we're all about gut feelings in the sports book. We fly by the seat of our pants here.
That's why your business has that's why your business has evolved the past 40 years.
No, we just took the shortcut. We arrived at the same conclusion. We just took a different route. But I
right,
mean,
so go ahead.
you look at their schedule though. They have. If you were to look at their schedule before the season started, it did seem a lot harder than what it seems like now. You look at some of these games like at Cincinnati and at Houston and at Indianapolis. Before the season, you would have thought, okay, any one of those teams have a shot to beat the Steelers, but all of them have just underperformed. A couple of them lost their starting quarterbacks. So now you look at some of these games like Green Bay without Aaron Rodgers and Houston without Deshaun Watson and, Indianapolis without Andrew Luck. So, I mean, they've been a little fortuitous in their schedule because of a lot of these injuries.
All right, well, let's transition from that to the other side of the state and the Eagles, a team that is now dominating, a team that is the odds-on favorite to win the NFC. Carson Wentz is even money to win the MVP. In the Action Network, they are now the third most highly ranked power-rated team after the Patriots and the Steelers. You've been slow to adjust. Bookmakers are generally slow to adjust for a variety of reasons, all of which are good. Where do you now have the Eagles?
I've got them right second next to the Patriots. I'm still making the slow adjustments. We talked a little bit about last week. If the Patriots were playing the Eagles on a neutral field, I'd still make the Patriots a 3-point favorite. So I still have them rated slightly ahead of them. But we've made another adjustment after last week based on that performance against Denver and how dominant they were. So now I'd probably shorten that line a little bit to New England, maybe -1.5 on a neutral field against Philly. But the one thing that there is a huge adjustment on Philly is the popularity of this team in terms of betting from the general public. If there was a rating for the number one team that bettors want to put their money on to cover a spread, right now it's the Eagles, and they're going to keep betting them every week until they don't cover for the bettors. I would put the Saints right behind them. So right now the two hottest teams from a betting perspective and covering the spreads is Eagles and Saints, and so they're definitely high on that power ranking.
Well, we're going to get to the Saints when we talk about the game by game, because I got an opinion about the line you posted for them. I'm going to call it a rotten fish line, but and we'll explain that in a little bit. Just for the record, the top 5 power rated teams according to the Action Network. This is from a Vegas perspective: Patriots, Steelers, Eagles, Seahawks, Cowboys. Do you have an opinion about that ranking?
The Seahawks, like I said, we started with them pretty high. I don't know if I'd still have them as high as they are. The one thing that they're still doing is they're still drawing action, even though they're coming right down to the end of these games and not covering these spreads. But the public hasn't jumped off them completely. But so that's probably the hardest of those 4 teams that you've mentioned. Certainly the Cowboys, I think, should be right up there. But the Seahawks, I'm not sure about.
All right. So also, by the way, the Action Network Super Bowl favorite. So I mentioned the Steelers are now the odds-on favorite for us to get to the Super Bowl. Our favorites are the Steelers, Eagles, Patriots, Seahawks, and wait for it, my favorite team in the NFL, the team that is logo challenged, but I think can make a turnaround, Jacksonville Jaguars.
Wow. You were not high on that team at the beginning of the season, and I'll tell you that.
Well, listen, my love is fickle.
Yeah. Yep.
I was not high on that team. It's a U-turn. It's a total U-turn because you know what? Their defense is so good. They are so fun to watch. Jalen Ramsey today is talking about how he's calling AJ Green weak and soft the entire game, and then AJ Green flipped out. This team is fearless on defense, and I love that. As a Chicagoan, as a guy whose favorite all-time football team is the '85 Bears, who sat in the cold through that season, I love a good defense.
Yeah, I think I was a year off. I love this team last year. We were talking a lot about how Blake Bortles was, the young up-and-coming quarterback a couple of years ago, and we thought with the addition of a couple of nice receivers, it was really going to make the difference in this offense. But they always had a pretty good defense. I think we were just a year off because last year they really disappointed a lot of folks and weren't even competitive in a lot of games. And there are talks about Bortles having to change his throwing style and everything like that. But they've turned it around a little bit this year. So, like I said, maybe we had the right idea, but just our timing was off.
Someone just emailed you. Is it an important email?
No, it wasn't. No.
Okay.
No.
Very good. Would you like to read it on the air, on the podcast?
No. Just it's about a luncheon that I can't make at one of our industry luncheons.
Are they going to be serving battered Flacco?
It's an Italian restaurant, so I'm not sure if it'll make the menu there.
We got to get on the menu somewhere. I need you to use your pull. You are a very important person. You are running the Boyd Gaming books. You are like a member in good standing of the Nevada State Gaming Commission. Start to take advantage of that, Scooch.
Yeah. You think I'm like that Ace Rothstein guy, huh?
I believe it's Lefty Rosenthal, I think was his name, from Casino.
Well, in real life, yeah. I was using the fictionalized version of him.
Right. Well, he was a Stardust guy. Did you know him?
The closest I got to knowing him was going to his show when I was basically a kid and being in the Stardust sports book and just like waving to him.
You're not so old that you overlapped with him.
No, I'm not that old. I was about when he left the Stardust, I was about 20. So I wasn't even able to work in the casino, I think, by the time he left. But I used to go there to listen to the show. He used to do that televised show in the Stardust, and used to be televised locally on one of the channels here. And so we all knew of him, and he was kind of a little, had the celebrity status even back then.
All right, I have a couple questions. Two people asking the same question. One is Sam Snyder. One is Sam Snyder at Sam52778, and one is Eli Baldridge at Elias Trexler. They basically want some college nuggets. Eli wants to know how lopsided you're expecting the Georgia-Auburn game to be from a wagering standpoint. Sam wants to know, can we get some college football nuggets? I have two very specific questions to ask you about that. Two games I want to discuss. One is Georgia-Auburn. Give me your take on that game, because that's a trap game for Georgia. And so it feels like that's going to be a wise guy game for Auburn.
It is. That's one of the games that we already got a little bit of wise guy money on. So a lot of times we look at these numbers when we make a line. There's the line that the numbers dictate that say this game should be this, and then we have to adjust it just based on what we think the betting is going to come in at. So here's a game where the line really should have been Georgia -1.5, -2. And we went on the high side here. We just went to the key number of 3 right out of the gate. We hung Georgia -3, knowing that the public money is going to be on Georgia. And we got some sharp money on Auburn right out of the gate. So some pretty big straight bet money on Auburn. The parlays are coming in on Georgia, and the ticket count is probably about 5-1 right now, Georgia to Auburn. So definitely a public game. Public's going to ride Georgia every game like they have been for the last few weeks. And the sharp guys will be on Auburn. They're with you. They think this is a little bit of a trap game for Georgia.
Desperation game for Auburn. Georgia's kind of got it locked up. I don't see how they don't keep it close. Not saying they're going to win, but
yeah, it's hard for these teams, especially in the SEC, because they've got so many big games. You look at rivalry games and you look at big games and key games, and just one after another, back to back to back. And Georgia's had so many of those. It's hard. It's really difficult to go into one of these type of games. You're not at home, and to win a big game like this, it's difficult.
All right. I also want to talk about Michigan State, Ohio State, because it's rare. According to our research at the Action Network, and we wrote about this in the newsletter yesterday, only 5 times since 2005 has Ohio State been receiving less than 30% of tickets going into a game, 30% of betting tickets. The public is all over Michigan State in this one because they're, 15.5, 14.5 point underdogs. The exact same situation 3 years ago. Ohio State is a 14-point favorite. Majority of the betting tickets on Michigan State. Michigan State wins outright. So exact same scenario today. Give me your take on that game and what you're seeing.
Well, Ohio State's the much better team, and I think a lot of it is just because of the Ohio State's last two games. So the line really, we've already made the adjustment to the line because the line probably would have been in the neighborhood of 18.5 or closer to 20 had Ohio State not lost last week. So the logic that is behind the bets on Michigan State right now really should have been applied last week when they lost straight up to Iowa. I did a local show here where they asked me to give out, my best picks, and my best pick last week was Iowa, getting 14 points against Ohio State last week. Just felt that it was actually the line had gone up to almost 20 by game time. And that was really the time to jump on against Ohio State, coming off of the big game against Penn State the week before that. It's really difficult in college football when a top-ranked team plays another top-ranked team, and they play a really close, emotional, big game. And the week following that big emotional game to come back and lay double digits the following week. Historically, they've not fared well. They've won a lot of those games, but to cover big numbers is a tough task. It just takes too much out of these teams. And what we saw is actually both teams, Penn State and Ohio State, coming off of that big game against each other, both lost straight up the following week. Penn State to Michigan State and Ohio State to Iowa. So our logic going into this game is, we've already made the adjustment to the point spread, but Ohio State, this is the game they rebound and get back to their form. To say that Michigan State's going to pull up two giant upsets week after week, and Ohio State's going to lose as giant favorites 2 weeks in a row. It's a pretty tall order.
Listen. If you think we're just going to skip over what you said about 5 minutes ago during this crazy long answer, where you mentioned
Which is what?
You were on another show.
Oh my God!
You thought you could just throw that in there? It's like,
well, you think this is the only show that I do?
I don't know, Scooch. How many other shows in the world have put you in the title of the podcast? The title of the podcast is The Buffet with Chad and Scooch.
Well, that's true. Yeah. No, you're right there. I mean, but I'll tell you what. They asked me for 6 picks last week, 3 in college and 3 in pro, and I went 6-0 in those picks. And so now they want me to be a regular. So I'm just throwing that out at you. And that's documented. You can go back. We can go actually look at those videos.
I feel like I should have right of first refusal in this scenario.
But this is my favorite show. Let me tell you that.
You think?
I have more fun on this show.
Do you think the podcast that actually has your name in it is the one that could be your favorite? I mean, that would be swell.
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah. I agree with you.
Listen, I want nothing but the best for you. I want you to have fame and glory, and I want you to be a world-renowned bookmaker. It only helps me.
You don't think I'm world-renowned?
I mean, I guess I want you to continue to be world-renowned. I want you to get bigger and bigger.
Okay.
Scooch.
Okay.
Hey, listen, we're going to talk about our games right now, and then after this, we're going to talk about Scooch Roulette and make our picks. First one up. Seattle is a 6.5-point favorite on the road at Arizona. Looked like maybe there was some early betting on Arizona being a pretty decent-sized dog. So tell me what you're thinking there.
Well, we already mentioned how Seattle's been a really tough team to kind of get a hold on because we had them ranked so highly at the beginning of the year. We had them right at the top of the NFC with Green Bay. And just this offense has they have basically no running game where Russell Wilson's their leading rusher. So it's difficult to get a gauge on this team. They still have the great defense, and that's really what kind of keeps them going as such big favorites week in and week out. But you have some weeks where they're able to drive 3 plays and cover 80 yards with a minute left in the game and score a touchdown to win. And then they have other games where they just can't put any points on the board. And like last week, they tried doing the same thing with a comeback at the end and came up a little short. So it's tough to keep laying points with this team. So the public is eventually going to get very wary of that. They're not quite there yet. We've made the adjustment down a little bit, and we're at -6 right now. But the early money, the wise guys were on the Cardinals. We got some pretty big bets on the Cardinals in this one, and then the public is keeping the number back up. We opened 6.5, we went down to 6, and now we're starting to get some money back from the public at -6. So there's not a whole lot of reasons to back the Cardinals, so there's that too. But this will be a game where we're divided. Sharp guys on the Cardinals and the public all over the Seahawks still.
So this next game, Minnesota at Washington, you hung a bad number. It opened at 2.5. It's already been bet down, so clearly everybody knows you hung a bad number because that's wise guy money coming in to bet it in the opposite direction. But this is a great question from Frankie Cortez on Twitter, at Frankie the Fixer. I like that. Frankie the Fixer. How much did the books make on that Redskins win last weekend? I know you had to be so happy about that game last weekend when they beat Seattle.
Oh, my God. That was the biggest swing of any game so far this year that we've had in the books. And I'll tell you, it's not that we won anything on it. It's just that we didn't get crushed. Last week was potentially one of our worst weeks of the season, to the point where after the morning games, I was already communicating to the senior management here to expect, one of the worst days we've had in a long, long time. We had the 3 big favorites cover early with the Saints, the Eagles, and the Rams. We couldn't overcome anything after those three teams covered, and everything was alive going to the afternoon games, both with both sides of the Kansas City Cowboys game, but then everything on the Seahawks. So at one point we were looking at the numbers if the Seahawks covered, and it was just devastating. And the different outcomes with the Seahawks won and didn't cover. Ultimately, we got the best possible outcome with the Redskins winning the game outright, which I can't tell you how much that's not only saved us. It was the biggest swing. If you look at what we would have lost versus what we did lose, it was just enormous.
I feel like that would have been a really good time to go to senior management and also say, have you guys considered adding Battered Flacco to the menu?
Hey, by the way, I just want to give you a heads up how much we're losing here. And, hey, can we put that Battered Flacco back on the menu?
The next time you've got to make that call where you're basically saying it's not going well. And I think what could really be a pick-me-up and might make people really happy and potentially even bet more is if they have a panko-crusted fried squirt steak with a chimichurri sauce on the menu.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think they'd appreciate that. They're still not even used, but they're not even used to the fact of me saying how much we saved. So that's why kind of like I like to give them a heads up and say, hey, if this team wins, we're going to lose this amount, and and just so that they know that this can happen, and like to give them the heads up there.
No surprises.
Yeah. But they don't like to know that we saved money. They want to see that bottom line. And, like we didn't win last week. It wasn't a great week for us. But I like to say, it could have been a lot worse. And they don't like that answer.
No. You know why? You know why?
Why is that?
It's a crappy answer.
It really is, huh? But it's the truth. I mean, think about it. You could always
think about
lose
how much
way
worse.
more than you could win. Huh?
Think about how much worse it could have been if I wasn't such a good world-renowned bookmaker who's not only has his own podcast but also does guest appearances on other people's shows.
That's what I'm really trying to say. I mean, let's get right down to it.
Seriously. Well, anyways, what do we think of this Minnesota game, which clearly the wise guys are thinking you hung a rotten fish line?
Yeah, so the wise guys actually bet the Redskins down. We're at the Vikings 1.5. The public has not embraced this Redskins team whatsoever. You look back at all of our big games, we have needed Washington in almost every game, and they're not as bad as the public thinks that they are for some reason. And I guess partially is the first 3 or 4 games of the year, the public seems to kind of hold that in their memory. You know, they watch all those games at the beginning of the year, and they get a preconceived notion of a lot of these teams out of the gate. But then when you look back on some of those games, they have a different meaning once you're this far into the season, and you look back at some of these wins or losses. And so for example, you know, the first game of the year, the Redskins played the Eagles, but the Eagles weren't expected to be as good as they are now. So you look back at that game and you say, okay, well, the Redskins probably should have lost against the Eagles. So they lose to the Eagles twice. They lose to Kansas City at Kansas City. They lose to the Rams. There's another game, second game of the year. You know, they beat the Rams, but it was a close game. But, you know, the public looks at some of those games that they should have been blowouts by this Redskins team. So there's no public support for this team, is what I'm saying. And on the other side of the field, there's a lot of public support for this Vikings team, even with Case Keenum at quarterback. So the line is more reflective of where we think the public is going to be on this game, and they're just not sold on Washington.
Yeah, you're going to get killed in that game. So let's talk about the Bears and the Packers.
Yeah, talk about another game that's would have been so much different at the beginning of the year, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is a weird game. Like, the Bears stink. Trubisky hasn't shown anything. Hundley has not done anything in the backup role. And so you're kind of making a line at a dead number here. I feel like the public's going to be all over the Bears. My sense is the wise guys probably stay away from it. Like, there's no real advantage in this game.
No, we really thought we'd see a lot more from Hundley. You know, when he came in on the spot with the Rodgers injury, he showed some pretty good signs that he could move the ball down the field, but that kind of quickly dissipated. And it just goes to show how hard it is in this league for a rookie quarterback to get adjusted. And it's very rare that you see a really highly effective rookie quarterback, no matter how good they are. So it's so odd to hear you say that you think the public money is going to be on the Bears against the Packers. But that really is the case. We've gotten a lot of Bears money, way more tickets on the Bears. And the sharp guys, for the most part, have stayed away from this one. Very, very little straight bet money on this one.
I can read these lines like a book, Scooch.
Yeah. Like a book called The Odds.
Oh, well done, my friend. Pittsburgh is on the road. Pittsburgh, who we noted, is our team, our odds-on favorite to get to the Super Bowl. And they are 10-point favorites on the road at the Colts. Boy, oh Manischewitz, my, oh my. Like, dude, you are going to need the Colts for your lungs. And I 100% agree with anybody who's investing in the Colts this weekend.
Wow. Well, you know, you are that sharp bettor. You're on the same side as the wise guys. We know that the public is not backing this Colts team whatsoever, you know, especially after getting shut out by the Jaguars a few weeks back. No support for the Colts team. But, you know, we in the sports book have actually have them a little bit higher rated than what the public has them. And that was actually the Scooch Roulette pick from last week. I liked the Colts over the Texans, and that was prior to the Deshaun Watson injury. And so I don't know how much you could take into that. But, I mean, we did really feel like 13 points for the Texans was way too much to lay against the Colts. So now here the Colts are at home. We know the public is going to be on the Steelers, but, you know, we kind of know the sharp guys will be on the Colts. We did make this 11. We opened at 11. The wise guys took 11. We went to 10.5. They took 10.5. It's probably the most bet team in terms of straight bets on the board. So we have more money on the Colts right now than we do on any other team on the board, all from the sharp guys. But having said that, I think by game time, we're going to still end up needing the Colts. Even with all that sharp money on the Colts, we're going to still need them because the public is just overwhelmingly on the Steelers in this one.
Yeah, they're going to pound them. The next game is my favorite game on the board this week because the Chargers are just always fun. They're an adventure for the better. And then we got Jacksonville, who you know I'm enamored with. So it looks like the Jaguars opened at 4, and it got bet down a little bit in favor of the Chargers by the professional bettors. Am I accurate?
Yeah, the wise guys are on the Chargers in this one, and
Yeah.
so I don't know. There's a one instance where you're on the opposite side, so I don't know about that.
Well, hold on. I didn't say I was on the Jaguars. I just said I'm excited about this game because I love the Jaguars and I love this matchup. I actually don't know that I can bet it. I feel like it's a really hard game to bet. I feel like the number is a little bit too in the middle. There's no clear advantage to me.
Yeah, I think the line is right where it should be. The public's riding this Jaguars team the same way that they're riding the Rams, they're riding the Saints, they're riding the Eagles, and until they disappoint, they're going to keep loading up on them. So there's no reason to expect that the public isn't going to be on the Jaguars really heavily in this game as well. So we tried to be a little higher than probably where the line should be, and we were actually, like you said, at 1.5, and the professionals took it right away, drove the line back down to 4. So I think that the sharp guys and the public will be kind of split on this one. I actually favor the Chargers a little bit. I think, the Jaguars have looked great. I'm not really convinced that they're, the opponents that they've been beating up on are really that high of a caliber. So we'll see. I think this will be a better test because I think that Chargers defense is really good.
You're a hater. Did you ever think you would live in a world in 2017 where the New York Jets are such an overwhelming public favorite and a road favorite? They are a team that I believe has exceeded the season win total. So, boy, that's a big liability for you off the books because the majority of bets are coming in. One more game. What are they at? 5?
Yeah. Well, we opened them at 4.5, and by the first game we went down to 3.5. So to cover some of those early 4.5 bets, I need them to win one more game.
Got it. All right. So you're one win away. Well, look, the public thinks this is it. They're 2.5-point favorites on the road. They're getting more action than anybody else on the board right now. Interesting bet. Interesting space. I think the wise guys are going to be in Tampa.
Yeah. Early on, there's a lot of movement already in this game, especially with the early lines. A lot of casinos will come out with the lines Sunday nights while the 5:30 game or the late game is still going on. And we've seen lines anywhere from the Jets -1 to the Jets -3 in this, going back and forth. So there was a lot of movement in this. We tried to be on the high side with the Jets, trying to anticipate where the public money's coming in from. And this is similar to that Auburn-Georgia game that we were talking about, where the numbers kind of dictate that the Jets should be a 1-point favorite, but it kind of doesn't pass the eyeball test, knowing that if we were to hang one, we'd be buried on the Jets. So why not hang a number that can draw a little bit better two-way action? So we went on the high side, and we were at 3. So, yes, at +3, the professional bettors are on Tampa. So they like Tampa plus the 3. I don't know how much, if they would like them if the line was 1, if they would still like Tampa, but at +3, they like them.
The Jets, man.
Who would have
Let's
thought?
soak that in for a second.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, if you're making these lines prior to the season, a lot was expected out of this Buccaneers team, if you remember at the beginning of the season. And they were supposed to be kind of like the NFC equivalent of where the Jaguars are and where they're meeting and exceeding expectations. And this line would have been the Buccaneers like easily 5.5, 6 points at the beginning of the year. So you're talking about a 9-point line differential from where the teams are now to where they were at the beginning of the year.
Oh, man.
Crazy.
It is crazy. Cincinnati and Tennessee. That game, it's probably about 4.5, 5. Titans favored. I don't even want to talk about this game.
Well, this is a game we're going to put on like in the corner of the sports book. So it's like a corner game. We'll just
it's the corner TV game. Nobody even wants to watch it. Have it up for like the 3 people who bet on it.
Exactly. I mean, but neither team is drawing any kind of excitement from the bettors. Some of the sharp guys actually took. We were as high as 5.5 on the Titans, and some of the sharp guys took the 5.5. We went straight to 4.5. We usually skip 5 because it's a dead number. And the public is still on the Titans in terms of like throwing them in on a parlay. So, but it'll be one of the least bet games on the board for sure.
At Rob Wirtz would he'd like to buy you a shot when he's out there. He's not even asking for a buffet. He'd like to buy you a shot. What is your drink of choice?
I like the Macallan, the 12-year-old Scotch.
Yeah.
That's my
Okay.
go-to. That's my go-to.
Here's a great game. I think you're going to get thumped on this game.
Oh, thanks.
Thumped. New Orleans is a 3-point favorite at Buffalo. Dude, like, talk about public perception. I think the Saints are sneaky good. And Matthew Friedman wrote a column for the Action Network in which we talked about it in the newsletter yesterday, called The Forward Pass, in which he sort of looks at some trends and spins them forward and makes them applicable for betting and daily fantasy. And he pointed out that the Saints have a pretty balanced offense this year, and the last time they had this balanced of an offense was when they won the Super Bowl. And this year they have a defense that is really, really good, really stingy defense, really top flight, pass rush, really top flight, defensive backs. 3-point road favorites against a Bills team that you only made it this number because they got blown up by the Jets, but otherwise have been a really, really tough out for everybody. So do you want to explain to me why you made such a bad decision?
Well, because we know that even at -3, we're going to get a ton of bets on the Saints at -3. So why hang 2 or 2.5 when we're going to get the same amount of action at -3? Just let them lay a worse number. I agree with you on this. This Saints defense has gone so underrated, and I've actually been saying it the last couple of weeks, where you take away their first 2 games of the year, they played New England and they played Minnesota, so throw those games out where they let up a lot of points. They've only been letting up about 11 or 12 points a game. So this defense, everyone knows the Saints can score, but it's their defense that's really been driving things. But going into Buffalo is a different story, and I don't think you can take much from that game Buffalo played against the Jets. Every team, the season is really a long season, and nobody can maintain the same level of intensity throughout the entire season the way the 2007 Patriots did. I mean, that's so rare. But to make it through this whole season, you have these natural ebbs and flows, so you can't take as much stock into one game, especially when it's one of these Thursday night games. I'm not really sure how to handicap these Thursday night games in terms of the game following it or the game preceding it, because it's such an odd time to play. And I've seen so many teams that are otherwise really good come and lay an egg on a Thursday night. So it's almost like, let's focus on this next game, means so much more. And this is the game. Going into Buffalo is a really hostile territory when you talk about home field advantages. Not all home field advantages are equal, and Buffalo is certainly one of the stronger ones. So I think this is a tough spot for the Saints. So 3, I'm comfortable with that number, but I wouldn't be surprised to see the Bills win this one outright.
I hope people listen to Scooch Roulette in a little bit to see if that's where you end up taking your picks.
Maybe.
Very interesting. I want to bunch the next 2 games together. Cleveland at Detroit, Houston at the Rams. You've got 2 teams with horrible quarterbacks who are huge double-digit dogs. For me, I don't want anything to do with these games because normally you want to bet against the double-digit favorites, but like between Savage and whoever is going to be playing quarterback for Cleveland and Matthew Stafford, who is having an amazing season and quietly turning himself into sort of an MVP candidate if this team continues to win. And Jared Goff was already there with a team that's been completely transformed. I don't know what any advantage is in either of these games. I guarantee the wise guys aren't playing these games.
Yeah, they've really kind of jumped off the Browns. We have to go up to 13 to really get any money on the Browns, and I really don't want to bounce back and forth the way I have been. I'd like to just settle at one number. Right now I've been bouncing from 13, 12.5, 13, 12.5. The sharp guys don't want any part of the plus 12.5, but I agree with you. 2 really bad teams. There's no reason to bet the Browns or the Texans. So if the public wants to get involved in them, they're just going to lay the favorites. And we talked about the Rams. Why not just keep riding this Rams team until they don't cover? So we know where the action is going to be on them. Yeah.
So
So yeah, probably a little bit too much respect given to Atlanta without Zeke Elliott in this one, and especially we don't know if he actually is going to play or not yet. So if anything, I see the line coming down. If it comes out for sure that Zeke is in the game, then you're going to see this line come down 2.5, 1.5. So there probably is a little bit of value on Dallas plus the 3 points here.
The New York Football Giants are in a tailspin. The best thing that can happen to them is they get to play San Francisco. So I feel like the wise guys are already pushing this number up. Like normally this would be the combination between the Wayne Newton Theater and corner TV game, but the wise guys seem to have some interest in this game.
Absolutely. Yeah, we opened San Francisco a 1-point favorite, and the line moved 3.5 points. We're actually at the Giants minus 2.5. Pushing that number up might even get to 3 at one point. So you have two teams that have one win between the both of them into Week 10. So the difference is there's no reason to get excited about this 49ers team, even with a new quarterback, and it's not like he's showing any signs of progression or that he's getting better in each game. So on the other side of the field, you have a guy like Eli Manning who's clearly not having his best year, but he's still Eli Manning. So if you had to choose between a team that can actually pull out a decent game, you'd be much more inclined to say it would be the Giants than the 49ers. The 49ers are in that same class with the Browns, where you're going to see the muffed punt inside a 5-yard line and a defensive score. And we just talked about it with a rookie quarterback talking about Hundley with the Packers. Now you have a quarterback with the 49ers, first year. I don't think you're going to see Garoppolo for the 49ers, but this Beathard is just, he's been awful so far. And going up against this Giants defense that, they looked terrible last week, but they can pull one out. If there's any team to bet, it's probably the Giants in this one.
The next game is the Patriots at Denver. You are going to need the Broncos to win or to cover so badly that it'll be one of those things where you're calling your bosses before the game just to say, hey, this is going to be ugly, and we're going to lose our entire day's profit on this game.
Well, I'll tell you what, if the Steelers cover against the Colts and the Saints cover and the Rams cover, then, I'm going to be making that call at 5:30 Vegas time saying that this might be the biggest game in years. And it's the kind of thing where it'll be, okay, I'm not saying if the Broncos win, we're going to win money. We're just going to lose less than if the Patriots win. This has got all the signs of just being one of those real ugly games. The ratio is 10-1. Patriots tickets to Broncos tickets right now. We did try to hang this as high as we could. We hung 8.5 on this one. And we took a big bet at plus 8.5. We took a big bet at plus 8. We're at 7.5 now. And now the bets on the Broncos have slowed down from the professionals. So what it's telling me is I have to be at 8 or 8.5 to get some more straight bet money. So if I want any more Broncos money, I'm going to have to go to 8 right now, because by game time, I don't think 8 is going to draw any money on the Broncos. It's kind of weird how you need to draw this money early in the week if you want it, because late in the week I might have to be at 9 to get any Denver money.
Oh my God. That one I genuinely feel bad for you. It's going to be such a hard day and such a hard game. Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, normally Denver does have a really strong home field advantage, but just not this year. And this offense can't move against anybody. And their defense is really showing signs that it's way past its prime. You've had two years of being the number one defense, and suddenly it's just not the case. So that was the one thing that was keeping them in this game. So that kind of makes me a little scared going into this game.
Monday night game. Careful your mic there. Monday night game. Miami is a 9-point dog at Carolina. Yeah, that's an interesting game. 9 feels high to me.
It does, but I've been really high on this Panthers team, and if you remember the last couple of weeks, 2 weeks ago, I really loved them against Atlanta, and I thought that would be the game they rebound, coming off of the horrible game against the Chicago Bears, where Cam Newton was just all over the field, interceptions, and that wasn't really indicative of how good this team is. We've said it before; they're only a couple of years removed from a team that went to the Super Bowl. As long as they have Luke Kuechly on the defensive side, and if they get Greg Olsen back, this team is going to make some noise in the NFC. We want to be really high going up against this Dolphins team that just nobody supports. The betting public does not like to bet this Dolphins team. Now, last week they did get the late cover. They were down 11 points against the Raiders on the Sunday night game, and they come back with the touchdown and the 2-point conversion to put the number right on 3. So the public may remember some of that, but for the most part, they're going to like betting the favorite on a Monday night. I don't think the line is too high. I think the line's where it should be. It's just a really good team playing a really bad team.
All right, Scooch, you know what it's time for?
What's that?
It's time for Scooch Roulette, and this week we have a theme song to take us in to Scooch Roulette. Again, courtesy of Matt Mitchell. One of our favorite podcast listeners.
Time to take down the hops.
When all hope is lost, all that's left is relief.
Let's play Scooch Roulette.
I am going with the Dallas Cowboys plus the 3 against the Atlanta Falcons. We've talked about it before. There's something wrong with this Falcons team. They've never recovered their offense. There's something wrong with that offense. And Dallas is just clicking on all cylinders right now, especially on the defensive side. I put that defensive front seven up against anyone in the NFL right now. They're healthy. They got a lot of key guys back. Even without Ezekiel Elliott, I think this offense has way too many weapons. So I think I'll go with the Cowboys in this one.
Okay, I like that. I like that choice. You know who I'm going to go with?
Ooh, you got a couple that you liked.
I did, but I'm going to go with the Indianapolis Colts as home double-digit dogs against the Steelers. I think the Steelers are playing great, but I think there's inflation on their line, and people are just not they're seeing the Colts generally lose, and they should not be a 10-point or 11-point home underdog.
Wow. Well, I'm with you. That's going to be one of those games we need for our lungs. So I'm definitely rooting for you. I thought for sure you'd have gone with the Washington Redskins.
I was close. I was close on the Redskins because I think that's a rotten fish line, and I'm going to try to make that a thing. Can we make that a thing? A rotten fish line? And,
rotten fish line, yeah, we'll make that.
And I was going to go with the Bills too, but ultimately I'm going with this one.
Okay.
Scooch, listen, thanks for coming on the podcast. Good luck with all of your other shows. And,
thanks.
Next week, people can look forward to more of their questions. They can look forward to more Action Network touting. Sign up for the newsletter, actionnetwork.com, and listen to our podcasts.
And don't forget the tarantula picture.